So good evening. We're starting a grand beginning. It's the second book of the Psalter. So it's a new adventure. And it starts with a sort of a double psalm. Psalm 42 and Psalm 43, for all commentators, are linked together. And they're really one psalm which is in two parts, presented under two numbers. But we're going to start by looking also at the first group in this second book of the Psalter. And to introduce this, let us go directly and look at the superscription for Psalm 42. So it's on your left side, above verse 2, it's verse 1. It doesn't have 1 on top, but it says, "To him who grants victory and insightful instruction of the sons of Korah." So we're going to have, first of all, an insightful instruction. Does anybody remember what our Psalm 41, how it started? It started like this: "Strides forward for the insightful one in care of the impoverished one." So, and maskil. And we have here also maskil in the superscription. So, insightful instruction is the translation of maskil. And this says a little bit of the sons of Korah. We're not in a psalm of David. We've been for 41 psalms in the psalms of David. And now suddenly is a psalter written by all by King David. It's not clear, but at least it's very clear that there's a whole group of psalms that are designated as of the sons of Korah. And here the first one has this qualification of insightful. And I think we're going to see right away that this new group of psalms has a very insightful quality, the psalms. And but who are the sons of Korah? You can read in the right column, right? Sons of Korah. And it says for you, this is also found in the next Psalms, all the way to Psalm 49, and then a new series, 84, 85, and 88. So there's two, in fact, we'll see, there are two groups in the Psalter, which are said superscription of the sons of Korah. Who are the sons of Korah? So we have that explained in Numbers chapter 26, verse 11. That's what we have. So let me read. "Dathan and Abiram, chosen from the congregation, contended against Moses and Aaron, disobeyed Moses and Aaron in the company of Korah. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up together with Korah. But the sons of Korah did not die." And so they are considered by the Jewish tradition, right, that to have received from this punishment of their father deeper insight into God's designs and ways through this bitter trial. And so we're going to see in Psalm 42 to 43, we're inside a bitter trial, and but it refers more spontaneously to the exile many centuries later, and when Datan, Abrion, and Korah father were swallowed up. But there's a tradition, a Jewish tradition, that they were able to prophesy in advance the whole future of Israel. And so this series of Psalms, for example, 42, 49, it's their prophecies which contain clear allusions to what happened during the exile in Babylon, etc. And but they knew it in advance. Or other interpretation is that the descendants of Korah, and one of them is the famous prophet Samuel. He is a descendant of Korah. So there are some great men in those descendants. And maybe some of those great men at the time of David, maybe under the leadership of David, wrote the Psalms. You have your choice. These are different traditions, Jewish traditions, about these Psalms of Korah. And so this group Psalm 42 and 42, 42 and 43, I wrote a title for it. And before we get into the Psalm, and let me read the title, because I think it helps a lot to see the how insightful a whole world we're entering immediately with this beautiful Psalm 42, 43. So it's a three-part story, because there's two parts in Psalm 42 and a third part in Psalm 43. They're all the same number of verses. There's all, as I read this, that thirsts, so a deer that thirsts to meet God. So the very first word in our psalm, as a deer cries out, right? And in this group Psalm 42, 43, we have Elohim and its associated expressions, which we find in each of the three parts, as I wrote, 7 times in between verse 2 and verse 6, and then 7 times between verse 7 and verse 11, and then 7 times in Psalm 43, 8 times, a little extra one, Psalm 8, Elohim, Elohim, Elohim. You're going to hear how it's a psalm where there's a very intense presence of God under the name Elohim throughout the psalm. So let me read, let's get back to the title. 3-part story of a deer that thirsts to meet God on top of the mountain. I remember my life in Holy Land. I loved looking at the deer when I was down in the valleys, jumping on the top ridges, right? And so that's the deer. But they thirst, and they thirst. They thirst. I continue the title. But the deer's thirst can only be quenched with water at the foot of the mountain in the waters of trial. So there's this paradox of the deer is the one that jumps on the ridges, on the tops, but it's the one who is quenched, right, at the bottom of the valley. And that says something about spiritual life according to the sons of Korah. And so I think this is I'm happy with this title as introducing the psalm. Let me read you another introduction to this psalm by the great Saint Athanasius, one of the first great fathers of the church. Listen. If in your intense longing for God, you hear the reviling of your enemies, do not give way to fear, but know that such a longing bears an immortal fruit, and comfort your soul with hope in God. When you are uplifted by this, and earthly sorrow has been assuaged a bit, say Psalm 42:43. He says, if you live precisely this being in trial and yet keep hope and able to be at peace, living the two, go to our psalm, right? It's going to nourish your life. So that's the something of the richness of the psalm. But maybe before going into the first verses of the psalm, I'd like to in these first verses, it's divided in three parts. And tonight we're going to concentrate right now on verse 2 to verse 6. And there's in this part one, it conveys three levels of meaning, and it's written at the bottom of the column of the document that I sent, but which we're going to look right now. At the bottom, part one conveys three levels of meaning. In other words, we have three. We're talking about three different intermingled realities. First reality, the reality of tears and shame in relation to the apparent absence of God, such that the unbelievers mock believers. Okay. It's a psalm of those who are mocked because they're in front. They can only speak about an absence of God around them. Second level of meaning, nostalgia for the festivals of the temple, which are premise of face-to-face vision in the afterlife. So it's the thirst, goes over and over in this psalm, seeing the face of God. The face of God, we can think, we see it in the first level in the temple, but also in afterlife, the definite seeing the face of God. This is also a theme of our psalm. Third level of theme, Deer's thirst for the waters. It's a little bit what we've already said. Symbol of my hope, with the paradox of waters that are in the valley, while the temple is the desired presence on top of the mountain. So this, so the deer has a very rich symbolism, which is gathered together in this psalm. And we're going to look at it a little more in detail. But now we go to read together and listen together. It's verse 2 to 6. And we're going to, what I want you to hear with the Hebrew, I'm going to translate the Hebrew with the translation I give, verse by verse. But as I said in the title, there's 7 times Elohim in 5 verses. And so listen to this music of it's a story, but all the time God, God, God is in the forefront. And that's one of the beauties of this psalm, and from beginning to end. But right now we're only going to look at verse 2 to 6. So let's start now with verse 2. It's what's red you see on your column. And now I'm going to have you listen. I'm going to have you listen to the superscription first.
למנצח, משכיל לבני קורח.
Okay, Korach, Livnei Korach, sons of Korach, huh? Maskil, sons of Korach. That's what we call it. Now we have verse 2.
כאייל תערוג על אפיקי מים, כן נפשי תערוג אליך אלוהים.
Okay, so you hear this Tarog, huh? And Elohim at the end, right? So as a deer cries out for channels of water, so my soul cries out for you, O Elohim. First verse, okay? Now, the second verse with the blue.
צמאה נפשי לאלוהים, לאל חי. מתי אבוא ואראה?
I went too. No, it's good.
פני אלוהים.
Elohim, yes. So I read it again in Hebrew. Tzama nafshi le'elohim le'el hai, matai avu ve'erai, pene Elohim. Right. First verse finished with Elohim, second verse with Elohim, but here it has two other times, Elohim and El in between. And translation, she is thirsting my soul for Elohim, for the El of life. When can I come and be seen before the face of Elohim? We continue now to verse 4.
הייתה לי דמעתי לחם יומם ולילה, באמור אליי כל היום, איה אלוהיך.
Aye Elohecha. Elohim, huh? Your Elohim is Elohecha. So where is your Elohecha? My tears are bread for me day and night, as they say to me all day, where is your Elohecha? You see this rhythm of Elohim that comes over and over at the end of each verse, right? So now it varies a little bit, but we're going to get something very close. With verse 5, I'm going to go all the way to where we hear Elohim.
אלה אזכרה ואשפכה עלי נפשי, כי אעבור בסך אדדם עד בית אלוהים.
Okay. This is again 2 lines which finish with Elohim. These things I remember and pour my soul over myself. Truly I passed with the throng, walking up with them to the house of Elohim. Okay. And then the end of the verse.
בכל רינה ותודה המון חוגג.
And so, with calls of gladness and celebration, a feasting multitude in clamor. The image of pilgrims, going up to Jerusalem. So, to see Elohim, to see the face of Elohim. And then we get to the last verse of the first part.
מה תשתוכחי נפשי ותהמי עלי? הוכי לי לאלוהים כי עוד עודנו ישועות פניו.
Okay. Why are you cast down, my soul, and groan within me? Hope in Elohim. Truly, from now on I will celebrate him, the salvations of his face. First of the 3 parts of our psalm. So now, because we're going to start slowly. I want to give you a little bit the richness of what an ear hears when it hears the psalm in the Hebrew that Jesus heard, right, and prayed with. So we get here to the very first word of verse 2, right? Ke'ayal in Hebrew, as a deer. Now, let's take a little time around the deer, because it's an extremely rich theme. So Jewish sages, so I think you have that, say the deer is the most pious of the beasts. Why is that? She raises her eyes to heaven and immediately at the same time digs a pit where she thrusts her antlers, humbling herself. And between the male and the male cries, and it's the second word of the psalm, as a deer cries their unique cry. It's a verb here, tarog, which is assigned for the voice of the deer. It's a special, right? And so the male cries with that special voice longingly for water, while the female cries when she kneels to give birth because her womb is narrow. So looking for water, looking for refreshment, and at the moment of bringing birth, new birth. So behind deer, there's refreshment, birth, heights, going down. So we have all this. And but let me give you a little more about the deer, because it is such a wonderful theme. And we have we heard about deer in Psalm 18, verse 34. It's the long Psalm of David. God makes my foot equal to that of the deer. And Psalm 29, which is the central psalm of the third group that we saw, the voice of the Lord who gives birth to hinds, to deer, right? It's the same, it's always the same word, right? And so, but we have this very, very impressive verse of of the Song of Songs. Listen to this verse. Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 7. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and the deer of the field, that you stir not up nor awaken love until it please. What, and here we get maybe the richest symbol about the deer. Is it, let me read it in Hebrew, the gazelles, right? So, by the gazelles, it's bi tsevot. Tsevaot, zi tsevaot. In Hebrew, one of the great names, which we had in, for example, Psalm 24, is Hashem Tsavaot, God of Tsavaot. So the gazelles have the same sound as the God of armies in Hebrew, right? And then the deer, it's Ba Ailot, but Ailot has exactly the same letters as Elohim. So all this says, right, that there's an aspect of royal nobility, or even in the deepest sense, in the divine sense, to the word deer in Hebrew. So as the deer cries out for channels of waters, right? It's this, it's the godly ones, right? It's with all these different nuances, right? Let's just with respect to this princely aspect, in the Lamentations, chapter 1, verse 6, from the daughter of Zion has departed all her majesty. Her princes have become like deer. but find no pasture. They fled without strength before the pursuer. So princes are like deer. And so it's this great, as the deer cries out, right, for channels of water, it's it's the princes, it's the divine people, the princes, whatever. You have this great nobility of the deer. And I think I've given you the most impressive quotes on the deer. There are not that many in the Old Testament. So with this, we're ready to go. We already started. As a deer cries out. So crying out in Hebrew is tarog. And we have here, there's there are words. Let me see, where are we? Here we are. In Ezekiel, right? There's first in Joel, we have in chapter 1, verse 20, even the wild beasts cry tarog to you, right? But here it's especially the deer, right? Cry out to you because they're right. And so we have the same verb in the prophet Joel. And then Ezekiel has a very interesting quote in chapter 17, verse 7, from the thirsty earth, okay? And here in Hebrew, it's tarogen. Eretz, so it's a crying out earth, right? Where the vine was planted, so he transplanted, God transplanted it to good soil by abundant waters. So going from crying out is because I'm lacking water, right? And to get water, right? And so even the earth is like a deer, right? Wanting water. So so here we have, and then so my soul cries out for you, O Elohim. It's we see that this imagery of thirst, of deer, and this whole psalm is focused towards Elohim. Going, all these sentences always go to the word Elohim. So then we get to verse 3, and I reread verse 3. She is thirsting, my soul, for Elohim, for the El of life. When can I come and be seen before the face of Elohim? And so here we have echoes, for example, also in the Psalms, Psalm 63, verse 2, O God, you are my God, I seek you, my soul thirsts for you, and to see your face. But what is it? Can I come and be seen before the face of Elohim? Can I follow what's said in Exodus chapter 3, verse 27? 3 times a year they shall be seen, all the males before the Lord God. So, and it's before the face, literally it's before the face of the Lord God. And so this is the requirement Moses gives, right? 3 times a year, right? I come and be seen before the face of God. And the El of life we have, right? This wonderful, I'm through water is giving me life. And so here we go to verse 4. What is verse 4? Verse 4 is the center of this first of 3 parts of the psalm. The first center. We're going to have 3 centers, which each part. First center. My tears are bread for me day and night, as they say to me all day, where is your Eloheka? So there's this nostalgia, mixture of memories of the past beautiful liturgies of the temple, right? In contrast with the current reality of exile and the desire to see again the face of God, which is his life, right? So we can think of the prayer of Moses himself in Exodus chapter 34, verse 18. Please grant me to see your glory. And this is at the heart of this prayer. My tears are bread for me day and night. Grant me to see your glory. And yet I live with this persistent dereliction, humiliation. All the day they say to me, where is your Eloheka? And so we have here this that so the opposite of the desire we'd have, that we leave events that can witness of God's presence, his power before unbelievers. And here I am without that. And so verse 4 is really saying, in other words, right, if we take the biblical context, right, we live the dereliction of Hannah, the mother of Samuel. So you have it here in the side column, 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 7. You have year by year, as often, we don't see it right now, but we'll see it in a minute. Year by year, where are we? As often as Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival used to provoke her. And Hannah wept and would not eat. Okay. Oh, it's just because I'm not seeing. Okay. And so Hannah lived this verse 4, right? And basically, that's at the heart of this first part, right? This persistent dereliction with absence of events that bear witness to God's powerful presence. And around this, you see the central, I put it in orange, and then there's two blue parts. So the top blue part we read, right? When can I come and see and be seen before the face of the Lord? And on the other side is remember how we did come and see the face of the Lord. Verse 5. These things I remember, and I pour my soul over myself. Truly, I passed with the throng, walking up with them to the house of Elohim, with calls of gladness and celebration, of feasting, multitude, and clamor. So, I'd like to underline for you here that in this verse, very particularly, but in a number of verses of these psalms, in this first psalm, there's words that are very little used in the Old Testament, and of which we're not sure of their meaning. And so I wrote to you here that we can have very, very different translations. So the translation which I gave is, right, truly I passed with the throng, walking up with them to the house of Elohim. And you can see what Rashi, a great Jewish scholar, how he translated. Instead of truly I passed with the throng, walking up with them, right? It is, I broke the barriers and led them up in slow steps, and as a mother taking her children to the fathers, right, to the house of Elohim. So that's another translation. of exactly the same words, and you hear this richness of the words in Hebrew, but it's so difficult to. But still, another translation, which is the translation of Hirsch, right? I was silent until I came to the house of Elohim. So, and the, so there's this richness of meaning behind any verse in Hebrew, which makes, of course, you can understand translations very difficult to bring to you because they complement each other, right? And but we have so we could where are we? Yes, at the beginning of verse 5, right? We have another word which is not too much used either, right? And which is I pour, yeah, I have poured tishtafef. I have poured out within me. I've poured out I pour my soul over myself. For example, Job, we had Anna above, but here it's close to the vocabulary of Job, chapter 30, verse 16, and now my soul is poured out within me. Tishafech nafshi. Days of affliction have taken hold on me. And so here we have this this pouring out of the soul, which is associated with Job's dereliction, Anna's dereliction, Job's dereliction. All that is in this psalm. And then we still have very, very difficult words to translate at the end of the verse, right? Where, which is with calls of gladness and celebration, a feasting multitude and clamor. So it's rather the very last, a feast of multitude. So it goes out, the clamor, it's the tumult of the people, right? For example, we had in Psalm 37, verse 8, better is a little that the righteous has, I think I translated, than the multitude of that many wicked have. But if we go back to literal Hebrew, better is the little the righteous have than the tumult of the wicked, right? I go up in silence is one of the versions. Right? And and the righteous have this deep peace going up to Jerusalem, the city of peace. Whereas the wicked are in tumult, right? And so that's the idea of tumult. And in Psalm 65, we have the roaring of the waves, the tumult of the peoples. Hamon, it's the same, Hamon, it's the same word as we have here at the end of verse 5. And and then it's at the end of verse 5, Hamon Hogeg. Hogeg is again a very rare verse, which we have in Psalm 107, verse 27. They reeled, Yehugu, and staggered like drunken men, right? So it's a multitude in tumult and staggering, right? And so we have this as they're climbing up. I've climbed up to Jerusalem from Jericho, and it's a steep climb, and we can think of Jesus going up with the crowds and Bartimaeus, and many were staggering, and at the same time, a joyous tumult around Jesus. And so that's what we have in our verse 5. And then we get to our verse 6, which is, let me read it. Why are you cast down, my soul? And why groan within me? Hope in Elohim. Let's already stop here, right? Because we have, it's the last Elohim of this first part. It's the seventh Elohim, right? Hope in Elohim. And there's this beautiful alternation in this psalter, which I tried to put in the title, right? In between experiencing the dereliction and yet living with hope. And let me not be submerged. I say, why are you cast down? Why? Do not let yourself be submerged, my soul, right? And be only groaning within me. But I'm giving to my soul the space for hope in Elohim. This verb hope is about 40, a little less than 50 times in the Old Testament, this verb, and 15 times in the Psalms. There's almost half. Is hope is a theme which is repeated, and often it's the end of Psalms, right? Israel, hope in the Lord. And here it's also the end. It's going to be the end of each part of the three parts. 3 times we're going to have, right? Let's end up with hope in the Lord. And so it's a very beautiful theme of this psalm and of the psalter, right? Is it the meditation is to lead us to hope. And this gave the very importance of the third of the theological virtues in the New Testament, right? Faith, charity, and hope. And the psalm is preparing, right? This triplet of theological virtues. Now, I've written here also that with downcast, right? Why are you cast down? That's a term which is only found here in this psalm, right? of the whole Hebrew Bible, right? And it's found 3 times. So, for example, the Jews say it's for the 3 destructions of the temple, right? The 3, we have 3 parts of this psalm, and 3 times the temple was destroyed by the kingdom of Babylon, by Greece, just before Christ, by Edom, the nation which is the east of Israel, and that destroyed the town 3 times. And basically, it's where it cast down. Why do you see the destruction of the temple? And with this whole background, it's we can think of the physical temple of Jerusalem, of which we can still see a few rocks, but we can think of the temple that of each of us, right? And that we go through repeated destructions of the temple by foreign powers, and that's a common experience of all of us, right? But we have this cast down just in Psalm 44, verse 26. Our soul is cast down to the dust, our body clings to the ground. So it's really precisely the temple, right? Us, the temple, right? We have the same story as the temple of Jerusalem. So here we are with having gone through the first of the three parts of the Psalms, of this Psalm 42, 43. And we're going to see that this first part is one which is centered around sort of the recollection, the memory of dereliction, right, of Anna, of Job, right, of the past, to which we also participated. And it works around there. And then we get the second part of Psalm 42 is going to be one more where it's taken over. It's the dereliction that I'm living here and now at the present moment. And it's the most difficult moment. But at the same time, it's the moment, the present moment is a moment when hope emerges to new heights. And in the center of the verse 9, in the center of the second part, we have, by day the Lord commands his covenant love, his hesed, and by night his song, his shiru, with me, a prayer to the El of my life. So, hesed, the covenant love of God, the singing of God, right, and is nourishing my hope. In the present time, we're at the same time, we're going to see next week, in detail, the second part, where we're really living here and now, the humiliation of being harassed by our enemies. So that's the middle part of the psalm, which is continued with Psalm 43, which is the third part of the psalm. And the third part of the psalm is one which is, and I will come to the altar of Elohim, Oel, right? You are my joy and gladness. Right? We're looking towards the future. Right? How am I going to be? I continue, right, to be under oppression of my enemies. But my hope is now of a future of going to the altar, and the altar is going to be where the sacrifice, where this testing, which I go through, is this trial which I go through, right, is being transfigured. And so I'm looking towards this work that's going to transfigure this the trial I'm going through. So this is the what I was planning to share to you tonight as a starter in the psalm, and so as to insist with you that with the Psalms of Korah, we get into extremely rich vocabulary that has many echoes, and that a psalm is in the Psalter is gathering the revelation that is in the Pentateuch and the prophets and the other writings of the Old Testament, and enriched by them, and giving them a new coherence, a new logic, and that takes them a step forward, we could say closer, preparing for the New Testament. And Jesus, who prayed the Psalms, right, and loved the Psalms, he found in the Psalms this singing of the revelation which is revealed throughout the Old Testament, but also very actual and preparing his the good news and the newness of the New Testament. So we have a few minutes tonight. Normally we still have 10 minutes. We don't need to stay for the 10 minutes, but I'd be happy if you have any comments, and I hope that one reason why I'm not going any further, because I'd like you during this week, right, with what we saw with the first of the three parts of this psalm, which I sent to you, is its theme and its coherence, right, around the central verse, that you can become familiar with the next two parts yourself and start discovering the beauty and the harmony around the central verse of the second and third part of this psalm, and this will be all the richer for your following the instruction of next Monday.
I just wanted to say, brother, that the verse "at the foot of the mountain in the waters of trial"
Yes.
is where hope emerges, is what I wrote down. So I want to say thank you for that.
Yes. Yes, that's the in the deer, in the image of the deer and the way the deer is presented, we have the deer put together, right, dancing on the ridge of the mountains, and because it receives vitality at the channels of waters at the bottom where there are trials, and that's going to be insisted on more on the second and third part, right? It's in the trials that we get the food that's going to nourish our dancing on the ridges, and that's the whole image of this wonderful psalm we're studying. And I would like you to get familiar with the whole psalm precisely with that perspective. And for us, it's difficult because we're in separate pieces. When we're in trials, right, there's no dancing on the ridges. But here, there's no opposition in between going through the greatest trials and being fully equipped for hope and dancing on the ridges. Let us try to learn that from this psalm. By the way, deer is never in the New Testament. Jesus left it for a very rich imagery in the Song of Songs and in these psalms, and in the Lamentations, and to prepare us for our New Testament, but where the deer is sort of in the background, but not pronounced openly. Right? Okay. Just, you see, I quoted you the Song of Songs, chapter 5, verse 7, but in Song of Songs, chapter 5, verse 12, this is the eyes of the beloved, his eyes are like doves besides channels of water. It's exactly the same expression as we have here in the first verse, channels of water. And so the Song of Songs in this psalm compenetrate, especially chapter 5 of the Song of Songs in this psalm, compenetrate in a number of verses. Okay, so if there's nothing else, maybe we will I'll give you the blessing for this evening, and we will go forward and prepare ourselves for next week, right? So, as a deer cries out for channels of water, so my soul cries out for you, O Elohim. My tears are bread for me day and night, as they say to me all day, where's your Eloheka? But why you cast down my soul and groan within me? Hope in Elohim. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. Have a blessed evening. Thank you.